All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our Round 3 Showdown stream for the U.S. Open. Going to bring you guys all the info you need for your lineups on Saturday, including a look at the weather report, some strategy for tomorrow's action. We'll also go through any player deep dives that you've got for me in the live chat, as well as any process-based questions on how to attack the slate. Outside of that, going to go through some shots gained metrics, building a player pool too, and then also going to build a lineup or two together to give you guys an idea of the thought process when you're clicking names on DraftKings too. So pretty much going to touch on a little bit of everything there, but like I was saying, hit me up with any specific questions that you've got and we'll fill in all of those cracks for you. We got Robert down there with a question about the 6 of 6 rate. That's going to depend on whether it's +6 or +7. It was about 5% at +6, but that's going to go up if it moves down another number. We got James asking about a 5 of 6 in a GPP. I would say it depends on how big the GPP is and whether you can actually take it down. Big field stuff, probably not going to happen with the 5 of 6. And I appreciate the kind words when it comes to the boots on the ground. It's a lot of fun up here. And yeah, I'm more than willing to relay that info to you guys. So no worries on that whatsoever. What's going on, Garth? What's going on, Steven, too? Definitely had a day out there. Then you said you only lost 4 of your 22 guys. That is a really good 6 of 6 rate then, because I'm not sure at +7 what the exact number is going to be. Probably in the 7 to 10% range, but you're going to be well over that percentage there. So good stuff, Joshua, and I hope you can run hot this weekend. That'd be pretty sweet at a major championship. Let's start off with the course conditions and exactly how it played between AM PM, because like I thought there was a chance of, it played easier in the morning, and I don't think it was the conditions that caused that. I think it was the makeup of the two different waves. You had a lot more amateurs, the more shitty players on this side of the draw. That would be the PM side, and that's why day one it played a little bit harder than the other side, and then today the exact same thing ended up happening. So I think that that is the bigger culprit when it comes to the conditions the first few days, and not necessarily how the weather, the firmness of the course, or any of that played out. So tomorrow you're going to see a pretty flat weather forecast. Are expected to get a lot of rain overnight, so it's going to be a pretty soft golf course. But outside of maybe a pop-up shower, which doesn't look substantial, luckily it just looks like a little sprinkle that might come through. Winds are going to be within 2 to 3 miles an hour from tip to toe, and the temperatures are also rather consistent. So the round hasn't ended. We're not sure if they're going to do twosomes or threesomes. They normally do whatever they can to have twosomes off of hole number 1, but if there is a chance that there's a pop-up thunderstorm and a delay in play, they're going to want to make sure that they get all the play in. So it's a Saturday. It's not a Sunday where it would kind of ruin the vibe of the golf tournament. Saturday be a little bit more doable to have threesomes off of both sides. But even if they did that, if it was the twosomes off of hole number 1 as well, I don't see a massive weather edge to be had. And kind of going through the data today, like I said, a half a stroke easier in the morning, but the first day it was the exact opposite. In fact, about a 0.8 stroke difference from the morning to the afternoon. So round number 3, just like we have the first few days, I'm not playing a massive weather edge because I think it just comes down to quality of player of this field. So we'll see if another data point ends up being right about neutral across the 2 different waves tomorrow, because if so, that's really going to confirm our suspicions after 3 rounds at that point. And it's hard to say with a golf course that we don't see every single year, especially one that has been renovated since the last time we saw it in 2016. A lot of times we default to the last time we saw it in major championship play, but that was so long ago on such a different track that I don't think that it's one-to-one or that useful here for 2025. So that's the weather angle. Just to go through a few other models to show you what it's got. You got a little bit of rain in the middle of the day that is possible. So that's what I mean by like maybe the one factor that could make one side easier versus harder. But this forecast has it coming in right about midday, which is going to affect almost all players equally, because your earliest starters probably still going to get hit towards the very end of their round. And then the guys in the lead going off a little bit later are also going to get hit by that towards the very beginning of their round. So I would say that it looks pretty flat. You do want to keep an eye on these though, because weather's a fickle thing. It can flip on its head real quickly on us. But based on the information that we have at 7:06 p.m. on a Friday evening, this is what we're dealing with for round number 3. So always stay vigilant with that, especially if you have access to a site like windy.com here. And we're not sure when lock's going to be. I'd imagine a little bit later than the last few days, just because there's not going to be nearly as many players that they have to get through the golf course. But if it's starting at like 7:30 or 8 a.m. or later, then most people should probably be up and have some time to be able to take a look at the weather and make sure that some crazy stuff hasn't happened in terms of those forecasts. So looks pretty flat right now, but definitely keep that in the back of your mind. One thing I want to check on is how many players are looking to make the weekend. They have the projected cut line at +7. Data Golf had it at like 90% the last time I checked. In fact, let's just go ahead and get a live number, 96.1%. So I don't want to say that we can lock that in, especially as it just moved to 92.9%. But with what looks like about, I don't know, like 70 or so players, maybe a little bit less than that making the weekend, it's going to be there's a potential that they go with the threesomes off of both sides. So if it ends up being a +6 cut and it is only like 60 guys or just a little bit over 60 that make the cut, they would probably for sure do twosomes in that kind of situation. But we'll see what the tour ends up going with. Next thing we're going to go through is building a player pool and what you should be looking out for in your plays. And before we talk through different shots gained categories, give you guys an idea of maybe a few diamonds in the rough to look at, let's talk about the ownership and how it normally pans out for rounds 2 and 3. We mentioned it a little bit yesterday, but when you have no placement points in play, there's not really all that incentive to play the top end of the board. Really, everyone's on an even playing field. And the thing that a lot of casuals don't really implement is they play the top end of the board like they're getting those placement points. And even if that's not the case, they really like the form of the guys in the top 5, top 10. So a Burns, Spawn, Hovland, all these guys at T9 or better are going to be significantly higher owned than the other players around them. So before we even go through the shots gained metrics, I always like to point this out as a PSA, is that the top end of the board is going to be really hard for me to want to get to unless the stat profile is bulletproof. I just have to play that guy because of how he sets up for Saturday. There are exceptions to that rule. I mean, even for today's slate, I had some chalk in my player pool like Victor Hovland, who ended up chipping his way to a -2 round. So definitely luck sacked his way, getting me to a pretty high score there. But there are definitely exceptions where I end up kind of breaking that because it's not who you play, it's how you play them, of course. And you can get different at different spots. But these guys a little bit further down the board. So let's start at like the T13s, maybe your T24s that are +4, especially as you start to get towards the bottom end of the board here is where the ownership tails off. And when we're going through the shots gained metrics, we're trying to find some diamonds in the rough. I usually try and focus my efforts on guys a little bit further down, just so that I'm not taking ownership that is inflated compared to the guys around them. So if you're new to DFS and how it works when you're just dealing with like round 2, round 3, where you're starting has no placement at all on what's going to happen for tomorrow. It's all based on your raw scoring. And the main thing that correlates to DraftKings scoring would be your birdie production. So we want players that are going to be aggressive, that are going to go pin hunting, try and post 4, 5, 6+ birdies would probably be an optimal performance right there. The guys that have the best chance to do so, by the way, it's kind of like a double benefit on top of the lower ownership are these guys down low, because not only are they going to be a little bit overlooked most likely, but there's also a really good chance that they're more aggressive because they have a lot less to lose. They've got only a few spots they can go down if they're starting on the cut line. So what you'll see those players do is go after even some of the tucked pin locations because they only have upside if they can move up that leaderboard. So in a DraftKings world where all of our points comes down to the birdie production, at least most of them for a round 2 or 3 slate, these guys going off early are not only overlooked, but also the kind of mindset players that I really like getting to. So if you see me kind of ignoring the top end of the board, maybe not giving all the love to like a Sam Burns with his really good all-around day, let's see, a Dietrich gaining 3 strokes on approach. Victor Perez, who had a hole-in-one, so it did inflate this a little bit, but even without that, still had a very respectable approach day up there at T7. If you see me ignoring a few of those players when we do so, it's for that very reason. So hit me up with any player deep dives that you guys want me to go through, and we'll go through those after we go through some of these shots gained metrics. So let me get a sip of water. We'll catch up on chat. And I'm going to hold off on the player deep dives until after we go through the top end of the board. And then we'll touch on anyone that we didn't already go through. What's going on? My guy, Joe Hoover. makes it to every live stream. One of the true sweaty tryhards in the community. Welcome on in, man. We got Antonio down there as well. He said, you see that I bought the hat. Yeah, one of, I think, 3 pieces of merch now that I've bought this week. I've gotten a few free pieces of merch. One, via a giveaway that they had at the merch tent, ended up getting a free golf bag, which I'm sending back to Florida. And then I also got a free ball marker too from Oakmont. And that was from a member that gave it to me that recognized me on the golf course, which, by the way, my guy DePeach, I know he watches these streams. We were supposed to meet on the golf course today, and we couldn't end up meeting up. But I was able to meet up with a few other people out there, including a guy that gave me that ball marker. So it's I don't even think you can buy it. So it's definitely going in my collection and not going far from myself. It's going to be a keepsake for sure. What a day. How am I feeling? Really good. A lot more energized than yesterday. It was a little bit more cloud cover out there. It wasn't nearly as warm as Thursday. So that was nice for spectators, not really baking out on the golf course. Outright on Dietrich would make your season. I didn't know you had him outright, but that's a really sharp call, dude. So hopefully Sun Run and can pull that through and hopefully have a top 5, top 10 on that as well, because I want you to get a payday there. He said Brooks is still lurking for sure. He said love that he's probably looking at the leaderboard and thinking, man, I can beat these guys. Yeah, so I think Scotty's lurking. I mean, Xander Schauffele's in the mix. He had kind of a little bit of a meltdown over his last few holes, unfortunately, though. I think if you make the cut, you could win this event. It's going to take one nuclear round. If you're +7, just making the cut, and you're going to win this thing. But if you pull Sam Burns and you shoot -5, I think winning scores probably even par. If I just had to give you guys a guess, so much volatility with that, though. I mean, it could be over par. It could be like 3 or 4 under par. It just really depends on how these guys play. And I know it's the cop-out answer, but there's no real way to predict it when the scoring average is 5 over par. I mean, in theory, it should be over par if the scoring average is 5 over, but we always get surprised by guys like Sam Burns that shoot -5 today. If that happens from a Scotty tomorrow, or happens from somebody at like -2 or +2, +3, +4, Brooks Koepka in that sort of range, he could win that event very easily. So it's going to be a fun tournament for sure this weekend. Can we talk about Carlos Ortiz? For sure. When we get to the deep dives, he'll be the first one that we do, Steve, and I'll remember that. Let's talk through the shots gained metrics for the board before we do so. And to give you guys the PSA with this as well, the reason why shots gained to ball striking is something that we look at from round to round is that it's the most consistent part of golf that we have. And by consistent part of golf, I mean that you can take your golf swing from round to round because it's a repeatable motion. It's something that you hear from players all the time. You can see it in the shots gained metrics as well. And it's why players can go on runs with their form. It's why a hot player can go off, get 3 or 4 top 25s in a row out of 4 or 5 starts. It's because of how they're actually swinging the golf club. And the part that kind of comes down to luck sometimes can be the short game. And there still are great putters, guys that are well better than the average, like a Denny McCarthy. But even Denny McCarthy has his down days. And I mean, we've outlined them hundreds of times here on these live streams before, dozens of times here on the SHIPIT Nation channel now that we've been doing them over here. And I mean, even the greatest putters, like a Denny, a Wyndham Clark, for example, we put him out when he's losing strokes putting because it doesn't happen all that often. Usually it's due to some bad luck. You'll hear that from those guys. Like I was, putting it well, I was putting it exactly where I wanted to, and they weren't falling into the cup, which is why those other categories, off the tee and approach play, chipping's the same thing, by the way, right? How you chip it, whether you're actually going to get it in the hole, a lot of that, probably even more so than putting, comes down to luck. But how you're swinging the golf club is really what you can control. So that's why we focus on that aspect when we're looking at the shots gained metrics. And guys like Dietrich, Burns, Adam Scott starting at T4 or better, I don't want to completely ignore them because they are good plays. They're going to project well in my projections that I post on my site. However, the opportunity cost, or it's probably not the best way to put it, but the cost or the big negative of getting to a player like that is the fact that they're going to be way higher owned than the guys around them. And it's not just the fact that they're towards the top end of the board anymore. It's also that they're towards the top end of the board and their shots gained metrics are lining up. When you have that, both of those things lining up, you also have a player that's popular in general, like a Sam Burns. Sam Burns is probably your most popular player on the slate. If it's not Sam Burns, maybe it's Scotty Scheffler for some reason. I would probably think that Sam Burns is going to come in a little bit higher owned than even a Scotty Scheffler will. that's the reason why that you wouldn't want to play these sort of guys towards the top end. Even an Adam Schenk, a Victor Perez are probably going to get some steam. The players that are maybe a little sneakier that you could get to, a Daniel Berger, he finished at +4, had a really bad back nine from what I could tell. I didn't get to see it in person, but I was tracking him on the scorecard. That was a tough scene, but a common thing for a lot of these players. Nicholas Norgard-Muller, he's a player that you could use as a ball striking popper. I gained 2.5 strokes approach today. Don't play guys that missed the cut like Sepp Straka or Evan Beck. You don't want to do that for your portfolio. But if we can find a Grazerman was a little short game dependent, but he did at least hit the ball well today as well. But a Davis Thompson, if he can make it to the weekend, a Hideki Matsuyama was hitting the ball well. He'll be going off early because of his leaderboard position. Patrick Reed hit the ball well, but he's at +7. He's going to make the weekend, by the way. I think we had somebody messaging saying that like Reed was going to miss the cut. I think he's got a good chance to make it at +7. So you might be okay, by the way. That guy that mentioned it before, I'm not sure what his name was. I think you'll be good. If he makes it, though, with those kind of shots gained metrics, over 3 shots gained in the positive, then he'd be a really good play for round 3 as well. So those are the players that I more so use it with. J-Day was a little short game dependent for my liking. Frankie Harris going to miss the cut, by the way. I have buddies that were really good acquaintances with Frankie Harris. Not a friend of my own, though, but I would have loved to see him make the weekend just because people close to me know him quite well. Who else? Novak. He's at +7. If he makes it, he had a pretty good approach day today. John Rahm, he's going to make the cut at +4. He was mega chalk today, but you know that after people got burned in round 2, he's going to be low owned heading into moving day. He'd be a really good bounce back candidate too. And the guys that gained a whole bunch of strokes putting, they're not players that I'm really actively trying to get to around the green as well. But if you're somebody that lost a whole bunch of strokes putting and you were still decent with the ball striking stats, then that is a decent bounce back candidate. So for example, a John Rahm who had the ball striking stats that we just went through, but lost almost 3 strokes on the greens, that's a spot where he'd likely be better tomorrow because guys aren't going to lose 3-4 strokes on the greens very often. This golf course can lead to some carnage, so it is a little unique in that aspect, but we've seen bounce back performances just even over the first few days at this point. So guys like John Rahm, especially because he won't be as highly owned this time around, probably going to make their way into my player pool. Thomas Dietrich, I guess we'll see where he finishes because that's really going to impact his ownership. But from the shots gained perspective, almost 5 shots gained ball striking, losing almost 3 with the putter. That really stands out as a spot for some regression too. Hideki Matsuyama, now on top of the ball striking, he also lost over 2 strokes with the putter. Those are the kind of players that if I can find it average to below average ownership, they will for sure be in my player pool. It's not even a thought, really. I will immediately just plug them in. If they're a John Rahm, who I think might be average to slightly above average ownership, maybe it's a little bit more of a conundrum, a little bit more of something I have to go through. But more often than not, I'll play them as long as they're not mega chalk like you guys have in the top 5, top 10. So that's why guys like Burnsy, it's not like I won't play those sort of players. Hovland, Spawn, Ben Griffin, Adam Scott, etc. They're not unplayable. It's just that they're normally much better options and players that you can still find a good shots gained metrics with just a little bit further down the board. So you can go to the around the green stats and you can do the same thing. Guys like Hovland, EVR, Tom Kim, and Terrell Henn, probably not going to do that all that often on tour. Also, guys like Sam Burns were carried in that category too. So he was green across the board, though, all 4 stat categories over a shot gained. That is a very rare thing to see on tour, by the way. If we go to the guys, though, that lost a whole bunch of strokes, it's not to say that losing putting or around the green is a good thing. It's just that if you did bleed strokes in these 2 categories and then you happen to make the cut because your ball striking was decent, then you could be a bounce back candidate. So for example, Matty Fitz did gain 2 strokes putting, but the 2.6 strokes that he lost around the green probably isn't going to happen every single round. So these might offset each other a little bit, but let's look at the ball striking on its own then, right? If that kind of offsets each other, he gained over 2 strokes ball striking today, which is definitely a plus heading into round number 3. So he'd have to birdie the last to make the cut, though. But if he could pull that off, I think it would make a lot of sense. It's going to be tough to do so, though. If it's on 9, it's going to be really, really tough. If it's at 18, he's got a better chance if he hits the fairway. It's in a bowl at 18, if you guys didn't see it. A lot of people were hitting it to like 4 or 5 feet when I was standing there. But who else? Like a lot of these guys kind of just sucked. Like maybe a James Nicklaus because he gained almost 2 strokes with the approach play. Maybe he can harness his inner Jack Nicklaus and throw some darts out there. Just has to throw on the yellow, I guess. Match that Sunday yellow and maybe he'll pull it off. But a Reed, we mentioned that one with the short game regression. I mean, Straka would have been great if he made the cut. If he was able to pull that off, he would have been a really good short game regression candidate. But that's how I use those sort of stats to my advantage. So these will update as players are finishing their rounds, by the way. So these aren't final by any means. But even before the round ends, I start my research process when it comes to round 2, 3, 4 showdown. I'm always looking ahead when I can. And on a week like this, maybe a little bit less so because I'm out on the golf course trying to take in as much as humanly possible and enjoy my time here in Pittsburgh. But when I'm at home, especially like when I'm not out running errands or have something to do during the day, I'm grinding out here looking at these shots gain metrics, right? Really trying to get a good idea for where my exposure is going to come in because it's not something that takes, a couple minutes. It takes me, a couple hours normally in total to go through the entire board. So, we kind of do the Spark Notes version here. We kind of just go towards the very top end of the board. But, the guys that are losing ball striking, I hold that against players and I adjust that with my projections. It's not to say that you have to completely condemn players that lost with their ball striking. There are going to be guys that bounce back from one day to the next. It's just that if you're going to get to a bounce back candidate, they better be super low owned, first off. And second off, you might want another data point that puts you onto those sort of players. So here we talked about some ball striking poppers. That's one way I get to players. Also the short game regression candidates. That's another way I get to players in my player pool. The way I do it for my Patreon members, that the way I structure my content and how I, explain my plays to my people is that I give them one of these tags so they know exactly why I'm playing all these people. And what you guys can learn from that and incorporate into your own process, and I preach this all the time, whether it's main slate or it's from the showdown perspective, is have a reason for playing every single person that you're on. Even for showdown, when there's 60 to 70 players to choose from, there are enough where you shouldn't just be blindly taking guys and going, oh, I hope he has a good round. There are enough reasons with the research to get onto plays that you shouldn't have anyone in your player pool for that reason. So we had the 2 reasons with the shots gain metrics that I just went through, but also course history. Maybe not as big a deal at Oakmont. A few guys that I'll probably throw in for course history reasons tomorrow. And then outside of that, we got high upside players. So guys that make a whole lot of birdies on the PGA Tour. And just like I was saying with the DraftKings scoring before, and why like the early guys that are more aggressive are advantageous for that reason. You also want to look at guys that make a whole lot of birdies on tour because those are the players that score the most DraftKings points for showdown purposes. So some of these guys missed the cut, like a JT, a Sepp Straka, but for example, like if you can find some value plays that are just going to sneak their way through the cut line, like a Nicholas Norgard Muller, for example, a Sungjae Im kind of fell off a little bit, but like especially with guys a little bit further down the board, if you can get some guys that are just sneaking through the weekend, those can be some really good low-owned, high upside plays to mix in there. And like Matt McCarty missed the cut. A lot of these guys missed the cut. It's hard to really find a whole lot to go through, but there are a few that you see here in that top 50 that you can mix in at low ownership if you need the reason to get to somebody at low ownership. And I have the live golf birdie stuff up here as well. I don't think a lot of live guys will be making the weekend. Carlos Ortiz, that we have to do the player pool deep dive on, which we're going to do here in a second, is one of the top birdie makers on that side of things. So like that could be a reason to take somebody that didn't have a good ball striking day, or maybe that carried themselves with the short game, but that is low owned. That's the kind of data point that I use to get onto my plays. And that's not to say that that has to be exactly your process too, right? That's never the idea here. Implement what you think makes sense and what makes sense for the lineups that you're entering. But it could be round 3 historical, right? I like to give you guys ideas as well for things you can implement on top of what I do. You can look at putting. So looking at POA putting, this golf course, if you can make some 10 to 20 footers, you're going to make birdies around here. That's what it takes to make birdies at a golf course that's this difficult and hard to hit it close to the green. So I don't think that that's a terrible thing to look for in plays. I don't know. I'm kind of blanked at that point because there's not a whole lot at a golf course that we've seen for the first time and that we have like really specific things to want to look for. Sometimes it's wind players. If it's a really windy day, we look for that. Tomorrow, I just thought of this and I may actually incorporate this into my player pool, do players that hit it a long way. The reason why I think that would be important would be because of the fact that it's going to be softer. It's already a long golf course. They're adding even more moisture to it. I think bombers, especially bombers that can hit fairways, that's tough to do. But, a few guys are going to pull that off on these soft conditions. could go nuclear low and shoot like a -4, -5 rounds, like what you had with Sam Burns there. So, you know, I'm not going to incorporate every single reason that we just went through. Those main 4 we went through will be the main ones. Maybe we throw the bomber on there too. I'm considering it. I don't know if it's like a for sure thing I'll add, but it's at least going to be in the in the cooker, in the works a bit for today's slate. Those are the kind of things that you could use to find a player pool for tomorrow. Just have a rhyme and reason for getting to players. And when you have 70 options and you have so many different combinations that you can play, that's why it makes a whole lot of sense. And you can see that top +7 is now T60. Let's see what the odds are now for that. So it looks like, let's refresh this. It looks like it hasn't quite updated since the last time we updated it. Now it's a 99.7% chance that we're getting the +7 cut line. So more than likely going to be that sort of number in case, unless there's some crazy stuff that happens with the last few groups out there. So those +7s definitely live, especially at that lower ownership. Gonna probably be teeing off earlier if they have those 2 sums off of 1, which it's not so much the tee time that makes them advantageous, but more so the fact that they're going out early and have to be aggressive and go after those pin locations. Those are the sort of players that I really like for that round 3 showdown slate. So let's go through those player pool deep dives. I know the first one we've got on tap would be Carlos Ortiz, and then we'll round this off with a little bit of strategy talk as well. So from the stat profile, he was short game dependent today, but across the board was neutral or into the positive in 3 of the 4 categories. The 2 shots gained to putting was his best category, which it's a little bit of a red flag, but it's not a massive red flag that could talk us off of them. Like I was saying before, if it's not the short game regression or the ball striking that puts me onto a player, maybe it's the birdie or better percentage that you have with a Carlos Ortiz. So probably making my player pool, I'll just say it right now. It comes down to the ownership, though. At T13, there's a chance that he's a little bit higher owned than what I'd like, but we'll see how many guys around him are also going to be a little chalky. It's not just your specific play, right? It's the portion of the board, because if there are a lot of guys towards the top end of the board that are priced right around Carlos Ortiz, he could get squeezed a little bit and might not be as chalky. And in that situation, for sure, I'd be playing Carlos Ortiz. But we'll have to see exactly where the ownership comes in. Of course, you can find that on my Patreon page for my stuff, but SHIPIT Nation is going to have theirs up tonight. So make sure to keep an eye out for all of that as well. Where we leave off, let's see any player pool deep dives. Did Fleetwood make the cut? He did not. He's +9, I think, so not going to make it at the +7 there. Let's look at Adam Schenk. So good old Adam Schenk. Not playing much anymore these days, but really good stat profile, round 2 at least. Tee to green, gained 5.4 strokes to the field, over 4 strokes ball striking. Really can't nitpick anything here. It's a perfect stat profile. He did lose almost 3 strokes with a putter, but we're okay with that. That's something that you can kind of fix from day to day. Adam Schenk isn't a great putter to begin with, but I wouldn't think that he'd lose 3 strokes putting for all 4 rounds or anything. And see, 12 guys are still out there at +6 or +7. Yeah, it's pretty much a for sure thing at this point at that +7 number, but a tough finishing hole. So that's the reason for all that carnage. Did anyone at +8 move up? Yeah, no one's going to move up, man. Or at least, like, if anyone moves up, maybe 1-2 guys make some birdies at the end. They're going to be bogeys to offset it for sure with how many guys are still on the golf course. Let's see. You love the carnage. Me too. Just hopping in. What a day at the course. You said, thanks for stowing the show. Of course, man. Wouldn't have it any other way. Is round 2 going to be suspended for darkness? So here's the view outside. I don't think so. It's pretty light out right now. And I don't think they have that many holes to finish. So I think they'll be good at them. Softer fairways means a few more balls out of the rough. Yeah, they're going to try and maybe hit more fairways, Steven. But at the same time, if you're just trying to hit fairways, you're going to have a mile into these greens. You're going to get 0 rollout. That's an issue. And then the guys that are more accurate to begin with, your shorter players for the most part, are going to be hitting like 6-7 irons in, and your other guys are going to be hitting wedges that are able to pull it off as bombers. So that's why I think being a bomber might be better for tomorrow, because it's not that we want the guys that are better on average, which might be the accuracy guys. I actually think that that's correct for tomorrow. That's not what we want, though. We don't want the guys that are a little bit better than the average. We want the absolute nuts. We want the guys that shoot -5 for showdown purposes, to go out there, break the slate like Sam Burns did today. I think a bomber is probably the only sort of player that can do that around here, because I don't see somebody that's short off the tee hitting long irons into all of these greens, making enough birdies to post that kind of score. So that's more so what I'm thinking when it comes to that angle. I do think hitting fairways will matter, but that's for bogey avoidance. And like I was hammering home with like the birdie or better stuff, that's not what we're looking for in showdown plays. It matters for like props, for leaderboard position, for outright betting, that kind of thing, but not for showdown purposes. It's almost all about the amount of birdies that we can post. Let's see. How can I figure out the 6 of 6 percentage? So there's a site, Ryan, called Cut Sweats on X/Twitter. It's Cut Sweats. You can find out the exact percentage over there. They post a little chart that kind of shows it to you. And in fact, I'll just bring it up so I can show you the live percentage at +7. It was like 5% at +6. So I imagine it's probably moved quite a bit since they've had that happen. But just one moment while I bring up that little page. Let's see, I got it right here. So follow them if you haven't already. It's free. You don't have to pay for this or anything. And it looks like it's about a 6, maybe 7% rate, depending on the contest that you're in, which went up pretty significantly after having it moved to +7. So we'll see where it all shakes out. Still some movement that can happen coming down the stretch. But you can see over here on the right, it's Cut Sweats. That's the page to use for that. Have a great weekend. Thanks. Cheers to you, man. And you said you'd like Rambo to attack. I like that too. The ball striking was there, just could not make a putt today. He's got that aggressive mindset. Last moving day at a major, he played very well. Sunday too. He backed it up, ended up getting into contention before falling off towards the very end. I like him too. And I think a lot of other people are going to like him, unfortunately. So in DFS, I think he'll be lower owned than today, but not quite low owned towards the top end of the board. All right, let's go through some strategy and then wrap this thing off so I can get to dinner and then do our prop and betting live stream a little bit later on tonight, which, by the way, will be at 9 p.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel. So if you guys do underdog and prize pick stuff, sports books for like round score, birdie props, bogey or worse, fairways, greens, check out that live stream. Again, 9 p.m. on my YouTube channel. That's GS_LukeDFS. But for the lineup, the contest selection for round number 3, it looks a little bit better than round 2, which you would expect. Weekend golf gets a lot of eyeballs, especially from your casual players. And then after you have the cut line happen, you have people with dead lineups. I'm not dead, but I'm definitely not having a great week to this point. So I'm kind of glad to have round 3 and 4 showdown, right? It gives me a few more slates to still attack. And if I don't have the best main slate, you can still have some fun out here for Saturday and Sunday. That's why they spice up these contests a little bit. So you can see it's the 300K sand trap. It is super top heavy though. So it's a third to first place. Not really my cup of tea. However, this drive the green is a little bit less top heavy. It's a 6th to first place. So only about half of what you had in that other contest. So not ideal. Ideally, we're looking for 10% to first. So ideally, this would be 6K to first if we had a perfect payout structure. If it was 6K to first, the rest of this top 5, top 10 would have much better payouts, which is really, that's the main consequence and why we want to play on those kind of contests. But a 6th to first place also isn't the worst that we've ever seen either. So the more sustainable payout structures are what you really want to focus on for your exposure. And the GPPs aren't always going to have the best payout structures, but when you get into these single entries, that's when they tend to get a little bit better. And this one is also a 6th to first place. Not ideal, but a lot better than the other contests that you have on the site. But when you can find these 10%ers, which you kind of got to dumpster dive a little bit on the board to find some of these 10%ers. But like the dog leg, which is a $33 single entry, this one is 10% to first, right? $800, 10% of that $8,000. And then if we find the albatross, which is the $12 single entry that they run, this one is also that 10% to first place. So these sort of contests, if you're newer to playing PGA DFS, those would be the first ones I'd go out there and play. And some people might have like a $50 bankroll and might enter like 10 lineups into that drive the green, that $5 150 max. The issue with doing so is that not only is the payout structure, not as sustainable, not as good for the rest of the top 5, top 10 as some of those single entries, but also you're playing against people with 150 lineups. If you have a $50 bankroll with the $5 entries, that's only 10 entries as opposed to 150 that other players have. And then it's going to be super tough also to finish in the top 5, top 10 against 14,000 entries. Those other single entries we're looking at were sub 500 entries a piece. The kind of contests that are a lot easier to get to and to actually have a top level finish on. So those are the contests that if you're newer to it, you should probably be playing. And if you're entering in the big $5 or this $25 GPP, just know that it's a little bit of a lottery. It's not a contest that you're going to win first or win the top three more than maybe once, twice, maybe up to 5 times in an entire season. A little bit easier with the showdown slates than the main slate. They're obviously a little smaller, so you can have more takedowns of what you'd have for a main slate format. But even the best players that are playing every slate 150 maxing like myself, only going to have a handful by the end of the year in those very big, large field contests, as opposed to some of the single entry, some of the smaller field stuff that I play that I have takedowns every single week in smaller field single entries and that sort of thing. So that's why they're where a lot of you guys should be focusing that exposure. And when you're putting together your lineups, the one thing I'd really say when doing so is that you've got to get leverage. You got to mix in as much lower owned plays as you can. It's not only the fact that you have so much chaos at this golf course. In general, golf is a very variant sport. It's a more chaotic sport, is more chaotic thing to predict than what you have with, let's say, like NBA props, like sports like football, even slightly more predictable than what you have here. I mean, Rory McIlroy missed, actually, I'm not sure if Rory missed the cut. He was on the last hole, could make a birdie to make it. Let's see, did he pull it off? I think he must have. He had a really good drive. I would actually be surprised if he didn't birdie the last hole. And let's see, did Rory, he did. Look at that. He pulled it off. Did he eagle the last hole? Or did they have a score wrong or something? I think they must have had his score wrong then, because they have him finishing at +6 when on the broadcast he was +8. Good for him. He was real frustrated at the end. I kind of called him out on Twitter. I said, hanging in the Louvre with him smashing the tee box. Good to know, because you could use him at low ownership towards the top now. Let me actually refresh this so that we have all these scores updated so we can go through this. Rory McIlroy towards the top would be like a really good leverage trade. Like, everyone thinks that he's dead after him showing all that frustration. Maybe he's a bounce back candidate I'd take that makes a whole lot of birdies. By the way, very aggressive player. He's going to take on those drivable par fours too, starting from way so far back. So let's throw him in there. I like the fact that he snuck through the cut line. That's on brand for him. We'll probably backdoor our top 10 now, because that's how Rory McIlroy rolls. He plays his best golf when it doesn't matter. Our next man in, we're also going to try and take somebody that's not going to be the mega chalk. So, we're avoiding guys like a Hovland. We're avoiding guys like a Sam Burns that are also going to be towards the top. Let's use a double spend up, actually. Let's go Rory, then Jon Rahm as our second man in. It's also going to force us down a little bit further towards the bottom, which I'm okay with, because that's going to give us an opportunity to get even more different to the rest of the field. So we're going to avoid Burns, definitely trying to get a little bit different. And let's go Hideki. He snuck in on the number with a birdie on the last two. So I like that kind of momentum. And you can see our average salary now is $7,100, which means we're probably going to have to play a 6K guy, which I actually think is a good thing. Let's throw in Carlos Ortiz. He makes a whole lot of birdies. I think he's probably going to make my player pool as well. Let's throw in, by the way, make sure all your guys made the cut. That's another thing that you don't want to do for round 3. You don't want to play guys that aren't playing the weekend. But like a Tony Finau, I don't imagine he'll be popular at T47. Makes the weekend. I think that would make sense. By the way, on the range today, they have trackers for like the highest club head speeds, the highest apex height, the highest carry distance of anyone that was hitting balls. Tony Finau had a recorded ball speed of 203 miles an hour, which is like astronomically high. That's like world long driver speed. And if you guys have watched Tony Finau on tour, he cruises at like 177 ball speed. So nowhere close to that 203 miles an hour. And we all know that he has the short backswing, that he doesn't try to hit it as far as he possibly can. When he hit that 203 ball speed, he clearly unleashed it a little bit. He maybe took the full backswing, maybe even Happy Gilmore'd it for all we know. I wish I was on the range when he hit that golf shot, because he was number 1, I believe, by 11 miles an hour. It was 203 miles an hour, Tony Finau. And then the next was one of the guys who qualified. It was one of the young kids who's probably like just a big bomber, made the cut at a golf course that was a bomb and gouge qualifier course. He hit it like 192 ball speed, which is still amazing, elite tier stuff, way higher than Rory averages, way higher than Nicholas Norgard Muller averages on tour. Tony Finau beat him by 11 miles an hour. So you know what? We'll throw him in there. Maybe he was taking out some anger on some golf balls. That's probably what it was. After having a frustrating day, he's like, I got to go out there and nuke a few. Then if you're on last minute, there's not actually a whole lot of options that are going to make the cut in the 6K range. But like a Kiefer, if he makes it, he wouldn't be an overly popular player. Adam Schenk wouldn't be at $6,500. He is T12. he's going to get slightly more steam, but not as much as a Thurston Lawrence if Thirsty finishes there at +1. So he's still finishing his round. He could slip up a little bit. A Goddard could be an option at +5. I believe he's still finishing up, though, so he's obviously got to make the weekend before you'd want to play him. But no matter who you'd use as your last man in, we can't build the whole lineup here. DraftKings frowns upon actually clicking in all 6 players. But really, whoever you use down there, you'd probably get away with, even if it was a Thurston Lawrence, because we've taken pivots at pretty much all of our spots so far. Like maybe not with Ortiz. He'll be about average ownership. Even guys like McElroy, John Rahm, I think it'll be average ownership, maybe even slightly above average ownership with a John Rahm. But because Matsuyama should be average to below average ownership, Finau for sure is not going to be getting a whole lot of steam for round 3. And then your last min in here, I would say if you're in the big $5 or $25 GPP, maybe you do avoid like a Thurston Lawrence just because it would be perhaps too chalky for your last man in. But if you went with anyone else, you'd be totally fine, even in the largest of large field GPPs. Now, if you were trying to play for a single entry, maybe you don't have to get as crazy with your 8K option. In fact, let's say that you really like Sam Burns. He projects well. You like the fact that he gained across the board. You can get away with that with this kind of lineup construction if you're not in that big $5 or $25 GPP. If you're in something that's maybe closer to 200 to 1,000 entries, I'd be okay with this kind of lineup construction where you have 4 guys that have some ownership on them, the top 4 here being those. Again, Ortiz, maybe average ownership, these other 3 above that. But you have Finau, and then your last man in here, I probably wouldn't use Lawrence again because you don't want 5 chonky guys in your lineup, 5 guys that are above average ownership. But as long as you had 2 guys, so Finau plus one other guy down towards the bottom to differentiate yourself. So like ideally, maybe a Goddard if he made the cut, maybe even somebody lower. Actually, is there even anyone lower that's going to make the weekend? A leverage play is your last man in, and you'd get away with that in those large single entries as well. So that's the idea with your lineup construction. That's the idea for round 3 in general. I've got to get some dinner in my belly before I do the rest of my content for this weekend. But of course, guys, for the round 3 showdown projections, you guys can find those on the SHIPIT Nation site, as well as over there on my Patreon page as well. My projections personally are going to be on my Patreon page. That's where I put all my ownership, my entire player pool with those tags that I was saying before. But on the SHIPIT Nation site, not only do they have their projections, which are great, fantastic. There's a reason why I partner with the SHIPIT Nation. They are an amazing crew themselves, but they've got the stone on there too, which I mentioned the round 3 historical. I mentioned, actually, we'll mention it now, the approach series, the putting series, which helps you go through some of the shots gained metrics over there on their site. The stone is the absolute nuts and definitely worth checking out as well. So check out my Patreon page. Also check out their website. I think link down below to the SHIPIT Nation website. You can find my Patreon page and my link in my bio, should say, on my X/Twitter page. But that's all I've got, guys. We'll go over any last second questions, and then let's have ourselves a moving day. Let's see. Where we leave off, he said, if you have a small bankroll, play the dime quarter up GPPs and the 1, 2, and 3 double ups. Yeah, that's micro stakes, I would say, Josh. I wouldn't say the double ups are the best options, though. Definitely the dime quarter GPPs. Those ones make a lot of sense, especially the 20 maxes that they have out there. But the cash lineups is a completely different kind of building. So you got to have a crash course on that before doing so, is what I'd say, right? You don't want to build like GPP lineups for cash cash contests. But if you have the right strategy, I kind of get what you're saying there. What's going on? Shot heard around the world. You're talking about Patrick Reed. Not sure what shot you're talking about, but all right. And then he said 6K guys you like for tomorrow would be Shank, Goddard, and Olsen. I think I'm on all 3 of those, to be frank. Like especially Goddard. If he can make it to the weekend, chalk that just hardly makes the cut normally goes off over the last few days. I think you're onto something there, man. But that's all I've got. Best of luck, as I was saying before. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and tune into the prop live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern time.